Welcome to Leading Beyond Limits, the podcast where we explore the extraordinary journeys and insights of remarkable leaders who have pushed the boundaries of what's possible. Your host, Angel Radcliffe, who is a digital transformation leader, author, speaker, and financial educator, will lead each episode and dive deep into the stories, strategies, and philosophies that have empowered these exceptional individuals to lead, inspire, and achieve beyond the ordinary. We're about to embark on a journey of discovery and inspiration, and together, we'll learn what it takes to lead beyond limits. So grab your cape, or at least your favorite coffee mug, because we're about to unravel the extraordinary tales of trailblazers who've turned impossible into I'm possible. Let's get started.
You know that incredibly specific feeling right in the pit of your stomach when you have to tell someone something they absolutely do not want to hear?
Oh, yeah. The dread.
Exactly, the dread. Your heart rate ticks up, your palms get, a little sweatier than usual.
Right.
And your brain just immediately starts running simulations.
Yeah.
Like trying to find any possible exit route from having that conversation.
It is a deeply uncomfortable, very human physiological response. I mean, your body is essentially recognizing interpersonal risk and preparing for a fight or flight scenario.
Even if you're just sitting in a climate-controlled office.
Exactly.
And that universal reaction is exactly why I'm so genuinely happy to be back in this seat today.
Mm-hmm.
A huge thank you to Angel for letting us cover the deep dive again for the podcast on these leadership micro scenarios.
Yeah, it's great to be jumping back into this.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because the scenario we're looking at today, from Leading Beyond Limits, tackles that exact physical dread head on.
Yes.
And the entire concept is anchored by one profound, unyielding statement. Radical candor is a kindness.
I mean, it's just 5 words, but they demand an entirely new way of looking at how we interact when power dynamics are in play.
Right. And just to set expectations for you listening, what we are really doing today is taking a quiet, analytical pause. We're examining the invisible pressures that leaders face when they communicate.
Yeah, so no step-by-step guides today, no motivational cheerleading.
Right, none of that. We're slowing down to look at the psychological reality of dealing with clarity, with ambiguity, and, well, with that discomfort we just described.
And the scenario makes a really fascinating claim right out of the gate regarding that ambiguity.
It does. It states, ambiguity is the source of all organizational anxiety. And then it follows that up by saying, vagueness creates a vacuum where insecurity and resentment grow.
Which is a powerful image, the vacuum.
Yeah, to make that tangible. Think about driving on a major highway. You're cruising along at 65 miles an hour, everything is fine. And then suddenly you hit a patch of incredibly dense, thick fog.
Right. Your entire physical state changes in an instant. Like your foot hovers over the brake.
Your grip tightens on the wheel.
Exactly.
But, and here's the thing, the anxiety doesn't actually come from the road itself. The asphalt hasn't changed.
No, the lanes are exactly the same width.
Right. The anxiety comes entirely from the total loss of visibility. It's the ambiguity of what is 50 feet in front of your bumper that terrifies you.
Yeah.
So I really want to unpack this. Why does a team's collective brain immediately fill a vague space with insecurity rather than optimism? Like, why don't we drive into that metaphorical fog and assume there's just a clear, empty road ahead?
Well, that comes down to the fact that the human brain is, at its core, a highly calibrated prediction machine.
Oh.
Its primary evolutionary job is to keep you safe. And it does that by anticipating threats and mapping out your environment.
Right.
So when you have clear information, even if that information is highly negative, the brain can actually process it. It can categorize it and formulate an action plan.
You know where the edges of the problem are.
Exactly.
So a known threat is just inherently easier to process than a mystery.
Significantly easier. I mean, there are fascinating psychological studies showing people actually experience more stress when there's a 50% chance of getting a mild electric shock than when there is a 100% certainty of getting one.
Wait, really? 100% certainty is less stressful?
Yes, because when certainty is absolute, the brain stops trying to predict and just starts trying to cope.
Wow.
But when a leader communicates with vagueness or, ambiguity, they aren't just withholding a few details, they're effectively blinding the prediction machine.
You're basically leaving them in that 50% chance zone indefinitely.
Precisely. You are stripping the employee of their ability to assess their own standing and safety within the group.
And the brain just can't tolerate that.
Not at all. It cannot tolerate a void of information when survival or, in modern terms, a career and a livelihood is on the line.
Right.
It will always fill that vacuum with worst-case scenarios to ensure you are prepared for the absolute worst outcome.
Yeah, it doesn't fill the void with, oh, my boss is probably just swamped with meetings and thinks I'm doing great.
Never. It fills it with, I'm failing, my project is in jeopardy, and they are quietly pushing me out.
That explains the insecurity perfectly. But the scenario also mentions that resentment grows in this vacuum.
It does.
How does that leap from anxiety to resentment actually happen?
Well, resentment is the natural byproduct of chronic, unnecessary anxiety. On a subconscious level, the team member knows that the leader holds the information they need to feel secure.
They know you have the map.
Exactly. They know you have it. So when you choose to be vague, the employee eventually realizes that their ongoing stress is a direct result of your choice to withhold clarity.
Go.
Yeah. You're watching them wander in the dark, bumping into walls, and you are actively choosing not to turn on the flashlight.
I see leaders do this all the time under the guise of the classic compliment sandwich.
Oh, the compliment sandwich? Yes.
Right. They've had a serious critique with so much positive fluff that the actual message is just completely lost.
Completely buried.
And they walk away feeling like, oh, I handled that delicately. But the employee walks away totally confused about whether they were just praised or reprimanded.
And that right there is the great deception of organizational communication. When leaders withhold clear, direct feedback, they genuinely believe they are creating a safe space.
But they aren't.
They absolutely are not. They are constructing an environment of chronic unpredictability.
Yeah.
The scenario makes it clear that giving direct feedback isn't cruel. It's actually the fastest, most effective way to show you care about someone's trajectory.
Because when you're vague, you're denying them the coordinates they need to navigate their own career. But, okay, if we accept that vagueness tortures this prediction machine and causes all this psychological pain and resentment, we have to ask a much darker question.
Which is?
Why is vagueness still the default setting for almost every manager on the planet?
Oh. Well, that brings us to what might be the most challenging lines in the scenario.
Yeah, it states, being nice to avoid conflict is just a way of protecting yourself at the expense of your team.
Right.
And then it poses this incredibly pointed question, are you being nice to avoid personal discomfort?
It really hits hard, doesn't it?
It does. Because we are entirely conditioned by society to believe that avoiding conflict is the polite, appropriate thing to do.
From childhood, yeah.
Right, from a very young age, we are taught that agreeableness is a moral virtue. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Right.
So reframing this societal version of niceness within a leadership context as a form of deep selfishness, that is a massive paradigm shift.
It is. And it requires looking honestly at the emotional pressures of being a leader. Like, why do leaders hesitate to be radically candid?
Yeah.
As you hinted at earlier, it's almost never because they lack the information. They know the marketing copy isn't landing. They know the engineer's behavior in meetings is disruptive.
So what is it then?
The hesitation stems from a profound discomfort with risk, with accountability, and with visibility.
It's like paying off a high-interest credit card with another credit card.
That's a great way to put it.
You're deferring the immediate confrontation, but you're just accumulating massive interpersonal debt in the process.
Yeah, exactly.
But how does being nice specifically protect the leader from accountability? I want to dig into that.
Well, stepping into conflict means stepping onto the record.
Okay.
When you sit down with a team member and offer clear, radically candid feedback about what needs to change, you are putting your own judgment on the line.
You're committing to a stance.
Yes. You are initiating a sequence of events where emotions are likely to run high, where the other person might be disappointed or defensive or even angry.
Right.
And you, as the leader, have to sit in that room, hold eye contact, and absorb the immediate brunt of that reaction. You have to be accountable for the waves your words create.
Which brings us right back to the physiological response from our hook.
Yes.
The sweating palms, the heart rate. We are biologically wired to escape that exact feeling.
We are. So by choosing to be nice, by watering down the feedback or using corporate jargon that signifies absolutely nothing.
Or just ending the meeting before the hard thing is actually said.
Right. By doing those things, the leader is successfully lowering their own heart rate. They are escaping the acute pain of an awkward conversation.
But the scenario forces us to look at the true cost of that escape.
It does. They're trading the necessary long-term growth of their team member for their own temporary emotional comfort.
Let's ground this in a reality most of us have seen. Imagine a middle manager. Let's call her Sarah.
Okay, Sarah.
Sarah has a lead designer who's incredibly well-liked culturally, but his design aesthetic is about 3 years out of date.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, and it's hurting pitches.
Yeah.
But because they're friendly, Sarah just accepts his work and quietly has a junior designer tweak it before sending it to clients.
So she never has the hard conversation.
Never. 2 years later, that lead designer gets passed over for a major promotion because his portfolio is totally stagnant.
Wow.
Sarah thought she was being nice, but she effectively sabotaged his career trajectory just to avoid a 20-minute uncomfortable conversation.
That is a perfect and unfortunately a very common example. Sarah wasn't shielding the designer, she was shielding herself.
Right.
And that is exactly why the scenario frames radical candor as a kindness. Because kindness, in its truest form, is often not nice. It is not always polite.
It's much heavier than that.
It is. True kindness is fundamentally about acting in the long-term best interest of the other person, even when it costs you social capital or emotional comfort in the short term.
You have to absorb the discomfort of the moment so that they can have the clarity they need to succeed.
Exactly.
Now that makes total sense when the leader knows exactly what the problem is and exactly how to fix it.
Like Sarah knowing the design was outdated.
Right. But I want to explore a complication here, because the scenario mandates that your kindness is found in your clarity, not in your comfort, and that you must be radically honest about what needs to change.
Hey, it's a high bar.
It is a very high bar.
Yeah.
So how do we apply this when the leader themselves is operating in the dark?
What do you mean?
Well, we know we need to be clear. But what happens when the leader feels a profound sense of incomplete certainty? Like you're looking at a project, you know it's off the rails, but you honestly haven't figured out the exact path forward yet. Don't you need to have a concrete solution in hand before you initiate a radically candid conversation?
That assumption is a huge trap, and it catches incredibly well-intentioned leaders every single day. Yes, the belief that you must possess absolute bulletproof certainty before offering feedback or addressing an issue is often just another disguise for the hesitation we were just dissecting.
Oh, interesting.
It is an intellectualized version of hiding from the discomfort.
Because waiting for perfect data is just a highly rational-sounding excuse to avoid the sweaty palms?
In many cases, yes. I mean, the reality of leadership is that decisions, strategic pivots, difficult feedback, they're almost always delivered with only partial clarity.
You're never going to have the full picture.
Never. You are perpetually operating with incomplete data sets, shifting market conditions, highly complex human dynamics.
Right.
If you wait for perfect certainty before having a radically honest conversation, you will inevitably wait until the situation has completely deteriorated beyond repair.
But wait, if ambiguity is the source of organizational anxiety, like we established earlier, how do you provide clarity when you don't actually know the final outcome?
That's the tension.
Let's use a micro example to walk through this. Let's say a director hears credible rumblings from the executive team that their department's budget might be slashed next quarter.
Okay.
And this could cancel a massive project their lead engineer has been working on for 6 months. It's an 80% probability, but it is not official yet.
Right. Still in the air.
Exactly. How does that director have a radically candid conversation without just dumping raw anxiety onto the engineer?
That is the ultimate test of this scenario. The key is shifting what you're being clear about.
Okay, say more about that.
True kindness isn't about acting like some oracle who sees the future with perfect resolution. Radical candor in the face of incomplete certainty means having the courage to honestly name the current reality, however messy it is.
So you don't have to provide clarity on the destination.
No, you have to provide clarity on the ground you are currently standing on.
So instead of pretending everything is fine until the budget is officially cut, the director sits down and says, what exactly?
They sit down and say, look, I want to be transparent with you about the landscape right now. There are serious discussions at the executive level about reallocating resources next quarter.
Just lay it out.
Yes, I do not have the final answer, and the project is still greenlit today, but there is a strong possibility our budget will be impacted. I wanted you to know what I know so we can adjust our immediate priorities together.
Wow. That completely changes the dynamic. I mean, it doesn't solve the budget issue, but it eliminates the vacuum.
Exactly. You aren't leaving the engineer to interpret weird body language or sudden calendar changes. You are sharing the ambiguity.
You're sharing the burden of the unknown rather than hoarding the power of it.
That's beautifully said, yes. When a leader admits they are dealing with incomplete certainty, but is still unflinchingly honest about the current situation, it builds an incredible, enduring amount of trust.
Because the team member realizes, my leader doesn't have a crystal ball, but they respect me enough to never lie to me just to keep things comfortable.
That is the ultimate psychological safety.
And ironically, by admitting you don't have all the answers, you're actually curing the anxiety we talked about at the beginning.
Yes.
You're turning the headlights back on, even if they only illuminate the next 10 feet of the road.
Because you are standing in the fog with them. Moving forward responsibly in these moments requires immense self-trust and judgment. It demands presence.
It really does.
It takes courage to say, this isn't working, or I don't know yet, without immediately offering a neat, wrapped-up solution.
As we look at the entire arc of this scenario, it really dismantles the traditional archetype of the stoic, all-knowing leader.
It does.
I mean, we started by exploring how ambiguity operates as a vacuum, how it actively generates anxiety and resentment because the human brain is just desperate to map out threats.
Right.
We then examined the incredibly uncomfortable truth that when we choose to be nice and avoid conflict, we are rarely acting out of kindness.
We're almost always protecting ourselves from the spotlight of accountability and prioritizing our own emotional comfort over our team's necessary growth.
Which requires such an honest accounting of our own motives in those split seconds before we speak.
It really does.
And ultimately, we see that the true mandate of radical candor doesn't require perfect, omniscient certainty. It simply requires the discipline to be honest about the current reality.
Yeah.
It is the commitment to stand clearly with your team in the messiness of the moment, because your kindness is found in your clarity.
The scenario leaves us with a heavy realization about responsibility. And as you step back into your day, carrying the concepts of this scenario with you, I want to offer one final quiet question to mull over.
Okay.
The next time you feel that physical tension rising, the next time you feel the urge to soften your feedback, to use vague corporate jargon, or to delay a difficult conversation, entirely take a pause. And in that pause, ask yourself, whose comfort am I truly prioritizing in this exact moment, theirs or my own?
We invite you to just sit with that reflection today.
Thank you for tuning into another inspiring episode of Leading Beyond Limits. If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to hear more from our incredible guests, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us. And if you have a remarkable leader in mind who you'd like to hear on our show or any questions and comments, feel free to reach out to us. You can find our contact information in the show notes. Remember, leadership knows no bounds, and with the right insights and determination, you too can lead beyond limits. Until next time, keep reaching for the stars and leading with purpose.